This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcasting Network. And I am Josh Strickland. I am here with your Tuesday edition of the show. And, not gonna lie to you, there ain't nothing going on. NFL free agency has officially died down. It has officially, died down big time. The draft is coming up in a couple weeks, but there's not really a lot going on there. And other sports, I mean, the NBA, they're trying to get something going. NCAA is still trying to figure out what they're going to do with football in the fall, which I still think is a little too early to make a decision on that, but we'll get to that later. And then, of course, you have nothing else. So you had WrestleMania this past weekend, which we'll discuss that in a little bit. But today's show, we're going to be talking a lot of hypotheticals and a lot of opinions. That's what we're going to talk about today. So we have, we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their potential draft. I found a position by position analysis, which we'll only go through their most needed positions there. Then we'll talk about Phillip Rivers. Is he actually a good fit with the Indianapolis Colts? We'll discuss that. How will other college sports fare if there is no college football? We'll discuss that. And then NBA is thinking about doing an idea of some games of horse. Discuss that later as well. And then, of course, we'll end the show with movies 69 through 60 on the Athletics Top 100 movies, sports movies. So It's happening. The show is happening. This show will continue to happen no matter how little has happened, just so everybody knows. So let's discuss it. Let's go with the first topic here, which is WrestleMania. WrestleMania, they had night 2 last night. They split it up like I mentioned this before. They split it up into 2 nights because a lot of the wrestlers didn't want to travel and stuff like that, and they pre-recorded everything. I think they pre-recorded everything like a couple weeks ago, but they pre-recorded everything, and now it's coming out now. So we'll just go match by match. I watched most of it. I missed, I think, the beginning of it, but we'll go match by match. So first, they started with Liv Morgan versus Natalya singles match. I did not watch this. Liv Morgan won. Good for her. Did not watch it. Next, Otis versus Dolph Ziggler with Mandy Rose. If you don't know what this one is, it's a love story. So Otis is like this huge guy, and then Mandy Rose is like this very attractive woman, and it's kind of an odd couple love story thing going on there. And then Dolph Ziggler, he's a fairly attractive guy, and he comes in and swoops in and steals her, and it turns out that Mandy Rose's best friend was the reason that he was able to come in and swoop. Anyways, so Dolph Ziggler and Otis, they fought, they wrestled. Otis won. Otis got a kiss from Mandy Rose. Best love story known to man, of course. There you go. I've been vaguely paying attention to wrestling. I've been vaguely paying attention to this storyline. I just reiterating, I do not watch wrestling as much as I used to. I vaguely know about most of this stuff because I follow the subreddit because they're pretty funny. But I vaguely follow this stuff, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it. But next up, Edge versus Randy Orton. So Edge had neck surgery, and he's been out for 7 years or something like that. He was told that if he ever wrestled again, he could die. So I'm very shocked that he's wrestling here. And they did a last man standing match where they went and fought in the back, fought all around the arena pretty much. And I don't know why Edge was in this. He was jumping off ladders and getting DDTs landing like right on his neck. It was very scary, actually. There was a point where he was kind of like just on the ground and like it looked like he was in immense pain. But it was kind of terrifying to watch, actually. I was very uncomfortable watching it. But Edge came out on top, beating Randy Orton. I don't know what the story behind these two was, but I just remember Edge came back during the Royal Rumble, and it was crazy. Because I watched the Royal Rumble, and he came back, and that was just kind of bonkers to me that he came back, period. So, anyways, Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley. I did not watch this one. I guess I missed this one. I'm not really sure where that came from. But Aleister Black won. I didn't watch it, so who cares? Then there's a tag team match for the WWE Raw Tag Team Championship between the Street Profits versus Austin Theory and Angel Garza. I did not watch this one. It was on in the background, but I did not watch it at all. Next, Fatal 5-Way Elimination match for the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship. Bayley, Lacey Evans, Naomi, Sasha Banks, and Tamina. Bayley retains her title. This is a huge thing because everybody was expecting Sasha Banks to like make a face turn or like go against Bayley, or Bayley to make a face turn and go against Sasha. Anyways, but none of that really happened. Sasha Banks actually ended up helping Bayley. I'm not sure if they want to save those two going against each other for later, for when there's an actual crowd. I'm not sure, but that happened. Bayley won. Bayley retained her title. And then next, John Cena versus The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, in a Firefly Funhouse match, which, if you're very confused listening to this, the Firefly Funhouse is a children's show that Bray Wyatt holds. And there's a lot of random crap that happens in it. It's a very fever-inducing children's show that they put. So Bray Wyatt facing John Cena in a Firefly Funhouse match. And this was in the same vein as the Undertaker versus AJ Styles, the Boneyard match that happened in night one, where it was all pre-recorded and they took a lot of creative liberties going on here. Like, I don't know what this match would have actually been if they had it at an actual WrestleMania. Like, this is one of those matches that benefited from what happened, because I think we got the better product from this rather than having it in an actual WrestleMania event. Same with AJ Styles versus Undertaker. I do not want to watch Undertaker wrestle again when he's like 60 years old. But the Boneyard match, it was produced enough where it looked good. This was also produced enough where it looked good. And so it was basically going through John Cena's biggest fears. It was cool if you're a wrestling fan for a long time, because you saw, like, John Cena was dressed up in his original debut outfit. He was dressed up as the Doctor of Thugonomics. He had an NWO section because one of his biggest fears is turning heel and being the bad guy, stuff like that. Like I said, this is one of those matches that benefited from the constrictions, and creativity really flowed out because of this match. It was really cool. Bray Wyatt won, I guess. It wasn't really a match, though. It was more of a just kind of psychologically messing with John Cena the whole time, which was very entertaining. I mean, it was very well acted, actually, which you don't say that very often for wrestling. Like I said, I don't know how this would have actually turned out if we had an actual match at an actual WrestleMania. I feel like it would have just been another boring match, in my opinion. But now, I mean, now it's kind of up there with like one of the best segments in wrestling, especially in the past like 5 years. So kudos to them. Then you have Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair. This is for the NXT Women's Championship, which I'm not really sure why Charlotte Flair won. Spoiler, by the way. I don't care. I don't really know why Charlotte Flair won this. I didn't watch this match at all. I just heard about it. I just saw the tweets that said Charlotte Flair won the NXT Women's title for some reason. But yeah, interesting. Interesting there. But yeah, and then you had the main event, which is Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship, and this was boring. These two, you don't really expect much, and Brock Lesnar's not going to do much without a crowd. I feel like. So it was kind of boring. It was a very short match. I don't know how long it actually lasted, but it was a very short match. But, yeah. But, overall, WrestleMania, it was pretty good. I feel like both nights had their strengths and both nights had their weaknesses. I think it was overall pretty well made. They did the best with what happened, what they could deal with. So, kudos to the WWE for being kind of creative and bringing in like all of this, bringing in some fun stuff like the Firefly Funhouse and the Boneyard match, because those were easily the highlights of WrestleMania. So kudos to them for being creative. But when we come back, we'll discuss the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what their draft could look like, a position by position analysis of where they stand before the draft when we return.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So as we all know, Tampa Bay, they have Tom Brady. They're looking to make a huge Super Bowl run here now that they have a quarterback that won't throw 30 interceptions in a season with Tom Brady here. They had the huge free agency signing of Tom Brady, but other than that, their free agency was kind of, it was okay. But their overall focus was re-signing their own key players. So they're not necessarily done making additions before the draft, but what's left is likely to be modest contracts for depth and sub-package roles rather than any big dollar splashes. So with the start of the draft now just 17 days away, probably a little closer than that, it would be 16 for you guys since you're listening to this on Tuesday, you get a clearer picture of the team's overall needs and what holes are most likely to be filled with those draft picks. So the Bucs have number 14 pick in the first round and a total of 7 picks over the entire draft, including a bonus compensatory pick at the end of the 4th round and no pick in the 7th round. So the consensus biggest need right now is finding a starting right tackle, but General Manager Jason Licht could go in other directions if the top options are gone by the time the Bucs are on the clock. After putting the top 5 picks into the defense last year, there's an expectation of an offensive tilt, but with older players in key roles on defense, Tampa Bay could build for the future at defensive line or outside linebacker as well. So here's a quick position by position breakdown. Of course, quarterback, you have Tom Brady, Blaine Gabbert, and Ryan Griffin on the roster. Tom Brady is, of course, the biggest name there. They got rid of Jameis Winston, and they brought Gabbert back on a veteran minimum as a backup. He spent 2 years in Arians' offense, and he will help Brady learn this new scheme and new terminology since this is Brady's first time in a completely new system. I know there's been tweaks in New England throughout his whole 20-year career, which I hope there have been tweaks, but this is going to be his first time jumping into a completely new style, playbook, scheme, stuff like that. So Blaine Gabbert was actually a pretty good pickup. Could the Bucs draft a quarterback? I don't think so. I think that would be kind of a wasted pick. They could use a late round pick for a young quarterback that could try to develop under Tom Brady, but as you see in New England, that doesn't really work out that well. Running back, they have Ronald Jones, Agunabowale, TJ Logan, and yeah, so they got rid of Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber signed with the Redskins. They'll certainly address this. Barber not brought back after leading the team in rushing in 17 and 18. His average per carry was among the NFL's lowest last year. The Bucs will seek a new back to pair in some capacity with Jones. Arians mentioned adding a pass-catching back as one of the team's biggest remaining needs. Brady likes throwing to his backs, not only on screens, but having them line up a receiver on occasion, stuff like that. So, will they really address this position, drafting a back high enough to compete with or even supplant Jones as the primary back, or whether they're okay waiting until later rounds or a budget free agent to simply upgrade Ogunbowale's role as a third down passing catching back? So that's, they could, I mean, you have Cam Akers. Cam Akers could be going in the third round to the Bucs. It's reasonable to think they could use a second round pick if one of the draft's top backs, such as Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift or Clyde Edwards-Helaire, are still there at number 45. So improving the run game will help out Tom Brady a lot as well. Receivers, they're good at receivers. They don't really need. They have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Justin Watson, John Franklin, Brian Mitchell, Jaden Mickens. I mean, Evans and Godwin, perhaps the NFL's best 1-2 combo at receiver, with both making the Pro Bowl last year and topping 1,000 yards. They're part of why Brady came to Tampa. Perriman, however, Brashad Perriman left for the Jets, so they could use a number 3 receiver there. But more than likely, they're probably not going to go for a receiver in the draft. But if 4 of the top offensive linemen go in the top 13 picks ahead of the Bucs, top defensive linemen Derek Brown and Javon Kinlaw are both off the board as well. They could go after LSU's K-Lavin, Chasson. But if one of the Alabama receivers, Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs, are still on the board, they could go after them as well. So tight end, O.J. Howard is their big tight end there. Brady loves throwing to his tight ends, as you can see with Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski and all that. Offensive line, this is where they kind of need that starting right tackle. That's the Bucs' most obvious draft need. And sitting at number 14, they'll have a good shot getting one of what are seen as top-tier tackles in either Alabama's Jedrick Wills, Georgia's Andrew Thomas, Iowa's Tristan Wirfs, or Louisville's Becky Becton. Arians has said that there are 5 or 6 tackles in this draft who are big time. So there's the question of what happens if those 4 are all off the board. Would the Bucs still take a tackle at 14, trade down to add later picks, or address another position at 14 and take the best tackle available at number 45? That wouldn't likely be one of the top 6 that Arians referenced, but the Bucs have found multi-year starters in the second round before in Smith and Marpet. So there's that. Defensive line, they have Vita Vea, Ndamukong Suh, which I forgot Ndamukong Suh went there, Will Golston, Rakeem Nunez Roches, Jeremiah Ledbetter, and Patrick O'Connor. They had the number 1 rush defense last year, and some of that was the teams being able to throw with ease early in the season. But Arians said keeping his starting front 7 intact was a priority, and they did that in re-signing Suh. They'll need to replace Allen as one of their top run-stopping reserves, and with Suh now 33, it's possible they add youth to the position. So they could take Texas A&M defensive lineman Justin Madubuike in the second round. And, of course, we go back to that scenario. If all those offensive tackles are taken off by number 14, they could get Chasen from LSU. So move on to outside linebacker. They have Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. I didn't know they had Jason Pierre-Paul. I'm not going to lie to you. Anthony Nelson, Casson Daniels, Quentin Bell. They paid well to keep Barrett and Pierre-Paul, with Barrett getting the franchise tag and just under $16 million after leading the NFL with a team record 19.5 sacks, and Pierre-Paul returning on a 2-year, $25 million deal after getting 8.5 sacks in 10 games upon returning from a neck injury. Nassib proved too expensive to keep as their third pass rusher, so there's a hole to fill there, even though Barrett and Pierre-Paul play a large majority of defensive snaps. So they could get Syracuse outside linebacker Alton Robinson in the 4th round. They also have 2 young players with upside in Daniels and Bell. So outside linebacker, my bet. Outside linebacker could be an interesting position there, but overall they should be fine. Inside linebacker, they have Levante David, who's a fantastic player, Devin White, Kevin Minter, and Noah Dawkins. David and White are back as the strength of the defense. One, a respected, reliable veteran leader, and the other just finding himself after a promising rookie season. Neither will come off the field much at all, but there's a need for depth to guard against injuries. Minter was brought back after stepping in as a starter in each of the last 2 seasons. Chichi's first 2 seasons have been significantly limited by knee and elbow injuries. Dawkins was added off waivers from the Bengals after the Bucs cut Deion Buchanan last year, and he played 190 snaps on special teams in the final 10 games of the season. Bucs could make a modest signing or use a late-round pick to upgrade their depth there. We've wondered whether former Jets and Chiefs linebacker Darren Lee would be a fit, given the experience with Todd Bowles, who is their defense coordinator. At cornerback, they have Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, my God, Sean Murphy Bunting, Ryan Smith, MJ Stewart, Mozzie Wilkins, and Herb Miller. So no position has changed more dramatically from the beginning of last season to the end, going from one of the league's worst pass defenses to a position that Arians had high praise for. That's continued in the offseason with no moves made, and the Bucs sticking with Davis and Dean as starting outside corners, and Murphy, Bunting, and Nickel. All were drafted in the top 3 rounds, so it's a trio that can stick together on the rookie contracts and develop for at least 2 more years. There's limited depth at guard to guard against injury. Smith is a special team standout, but has struggled when pressed into duty at corner. Then move on to safety. Jordan Whitehead, Andrew Adams, Mike Edwards, Justin Evans, Dixon, DeAndre Hall. They got Darian Stewart and Orion Stewart. They're off the roster now. So safety might be the biggest unknown in assessing Bucs' potential needs in the draft entering the season. They put draft picks in the top 4 rounds into safeties for 3 straight drafts. But there's still enough uncertainty that some see it as a need. Edwards, a 3rd rounder last year, was seen as a potential starter, but had a lesser half of a shared role with Adams, who was signed off the street in September. Whitehead has started 25 games in 2 years, but has only 1 interception and limited splash plays with 0 sacks. Biggest unknown is Evans. Hasn't played or practiced in 16 months due to injuries. They could put another draft pick into safety or take a bigger step and bring in a veteran starter such as Tony Jefferson, who's coming off an ACL surgery, but played with for Arians and Bowles in Arizona, and would add much needed experience. So there you go. That is the position by position analysis for the Buccaneers, where they stand before we head into the draft, which is 16 days away from when you're listening to this. So it's interesting. When we return, we'll talk about Phillip Rivers and his fit with the Colts.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, of course, one of the bigger moves over the offseason was Phillip Rivers going to the Indianapolis Colts. He was part of the huge quarterback market that was going on that's kind of settled now. Although we still have Cam Newton, we still have James Winston, we still got some of those guys still available. And honestly, I don't really know where they could go except for Los Angeles Chargers. But anyway, so last year at this time, the Colts were coming off a 10-6 season that ended in the divisional round of the playoffs. With the trio of Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, and quarterback Andrew Luck, they look like a team on the rise in the AFC. The Los Angeles Chargers were coming off a 12-4 season and also ended up in the divisional round. Phillip Rivers had turned a brilliant year at the age of 37, completing 38.3% of his passes, averaging 8.5 yards per attempt, and throwing 32 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. So if you're a fan of either franchise 2 years ago, you feel pretty great. But boy, a lot can happen as we know right now. A lot can happen in just a couple months. So what's happened in the last 8 months is a good illustration of how quickly things can change in the NFL. Andrew Luck retired. Jacoby Brissett took over, and the Colts finished 7-9. Rivers and the Chargers agreed to part ways after a 5-11 season. Now, Rivers replaces Jacoby Brissett. And the Colts hope he can help them make a playoff run during the final stage of his career. To help gauge the likelihood of that happening, below is an analytical look at how Rivers performed last season. So let's start with accuracy. Rivers' career completion percentage is 64.7, but he's actually been above that in each of the past 2 seasons. The problem with looking at completion percentage in isolation is that it doesn't factor in where the quarterback is throwing the ball and other variables. It's a lot easier to complete checkdowns to running backs than go routes 25 yards downfield. Next Gen Stats tracks a metric called completion percentage above expectation. This looks at every throw and measures the probability of a completion based on the factors like how far the throw is, the receiver's separation, and whether the quarterback is pressured. It then compares the quarterback's actual completion percentage to his expected completion percentage. The numbers here for Rivers were encouraging. So completion percentage above expectations, he was 8th compared to Jacoby Brissett's, which was 36th. And then percentage of on-target throws was 7th compared to Jacoby Brissett's 20th. So completion percentage above expectations, as I mentioned, his Rivers was 64.1%. His actual completion percentage was 66%. So he was plus 1.9%, which is the 8th best mark among 39 qualifying quarterbacks. And as we mentioned, Brissett, he was down 4% from his normal, which was 64.9, to his actual, which was 60.9, which ranked 36 out of 39, ahead of only Dwayne Haskins, Gardner Minshew, and David Blau, however you say that name. One thing that completion percentage above expectation doesn't take into account is drops by receivers. Brissett was hurt more by drops last season than Rivers was. The second column in the table, which was percentage of on-target throws, shows each quarterback's percentage of on-target throws, which is an attempt to remove the variable of whether the receiver actually made the catch and focus solely on the throw. The good news for Colts fans is that Rivers was a top 8 quarterback in both categories. So it's risky to project how quarterbacks are going to perform once they reach their late 30s, but the accuracy numbers with Rivers are encouraging. Tom Brady, for example, finished 32nd in completion percentage above expectation last year, and his numbers in that category have declined for 3 straight seasons. So barring a big decline for Rivers in 2020, the Colts should see an uptick in accuracy from the quarterback decision. Next, we'll talk about decision-making, which is kind of Rivers' biggest issue. Last year, at least, he was picked off on 3.4% of his pass attempts, which ranked 30th in the whole league, ahead of only Jameis Winston and Baker Mayfield, which is not good company to be in when it comes to interceptions. Interceptions have been an issue at various points in Rivers' career. He has never been afraid to pull the trigger and take chances on high-risk throws. He's had an interception rate of 3% or higher 5 times in his 14 seasons as a starter. Brissett, meanwhile, ranked 8th with an interception percentage of 1.3%. One way to see how many negative plays a quarterback produces is to add up their interceptions, fumbles, and sacks and divide by their total number of pass plays to come up with a percentage. So, negative play percentage, that's what we're calling it. So, Phillip Rivers, he had 9.8% last year, which was 17th in the league. Jacoby Brissett has 7.9%. That was 7th in the league. So Rivers is more a high-risk, high-reward option, which can be good because that means he gets bigger plays. He goes for the bigger plays more often than Jacoby Brissett does. So, I mean, if he can limit those mistakes, the big plays, here's my opinion on big plays. I mean, yes, they're always going to be risky, but if it works, it works. So Brissett didn't make all the plays that Reich and Ballard wanted him to make. He also did a good job of not losing the game. He's not mistake prone like Rivers was last year. So to a large degree, Rivers' ability to limit mistakes will determine how successful he is in 2020. Next, we're going to talk about passing profile. So Next Gen Stats tracks aggressiveness percentage, which measures how often a quarterback throws into a tight window, defined as having a defender within 1 yard of the target. The two quarterbacks were almost identical here. 17.1% of Rivers' attempts were into tight windows, while Brissett was at 17%. It's clear that one big factor in the Colts' decision to turn to Rivers is a hope that he can make more plays downfield than Brissett did, like we mentioned just a moment ago. He has a unique ways of making plays downfield. Reich said to the Athletic, and he's done that his whole career. All the stats point to that. I've seen it firsthand. So here's a look at how Rivers and Brissett compared in terms of throwing downfield last season. So throwing downfield, you have a downfield percentage, which is defined as 20 yards or more from the line of scrimmage, and then you have a downfield accuracy. So Phillip Rivers, his downfield percentage was 14.5% compared to Jacoby Brissett's 9.5%. But the downfield accuracy, Phillip had a 43%, and while Jacoby Brissett had 45.2%. So accuracy numbers were similar. Brissett actually had a slight edge. These were throws charted as on target, even if the receiver dropped a catchable pass. The QB still received a positive mark. If there's an area to keep an eye on in terms of Rivers declining, this is probably it. Just 43% of his downfield attempts were on target, which ranked 27th out of the 35 qualifying quarterbacks. So what about pass protection? When Rivers first became a free agent, a common refrain was that he needed to go somewhere with a strong offensive line. Rivers has never been the most mobile quarterback, and at this stage of his career especially, he's not going to make a lot of second reaction plays. Last year, Rivers took a sack or hit on 20% of his pass plays, while Brissett was nearly identical at 20.9%. But the numbers suggest that Rivers should see that number drop significantly if the Colts offensive line can play as well as it did last season. So let's look at release time. This is how we're going to compare that. We're going to look at release time and the percentage of throws under 2.5 seconds. So Phillip Rivers, his average time to throw is 2.63 seconds, which is 5th in the NFL, while Jacoby Brissett had 2.93 seconds, which is 31st. Percentage of throws under 2.5 seconds, Phillip Rivers had 38.8%, while Jacoby Brissett had 31.6%. So in 2018, Reich schemed the offense to help the offensive line. So Luck's average time to throw was 2.63 seconds, identical to what Rivers posted last year, and 41% of Luck's attempts that season were thrown in 2.5 seconds or less. Luck was sacked on just 2.7% of his pass plays in 2018, the lowest mark in the NFL. So barring major injuries, the Colts have a position to protect Rivers, and his ability to get rid of the ball quickly should help the offensive line. So what does this all mean? Well, here's some final thoughts from me. So the Colts offensive line is good enough to give Rivers more time to throw these deep balls. I feel like one of his main issues with deep balls last year was that the Chargers offensive line was dreaded, and he kind of had to just kind of blindly throw balls a bunch of times. If he has more time, he has a little bit more time for decision making, and he can be a little bit more accurate. Now, the age thing is, of course, an issue, but based off his stats with completion percentage above expectation, percentage of on-target throws, he's still a top 8 quarterback in those regard. He has more negative plays, but like I said, I'm propping that up to he has less time to throw the ball. So he kind of like just blindly throws it a couple times, especially downfield. He throws downfield more than Jacoby Brissett. Overall, I think Phillip Rivers is going to do well for the Colts, barring any catastrophic like injury or anything like that. I think Phillip Rivers is going to do really well with the Indianapolis Colts, and stats kind of back it up. The Colts are looking for a guy who throws downfield more, and look at that. Throws downfield more. If he can limit those interceptions, which a better offensive line should help with that, then the Colts are going to be a big-time team next year. They're going to be, and they're poised to win that division since the Texans got rid of DeAndre Hopkins because Bill O'Brien's stupid. Once again, have to mention that every show. But there you have it. That's a deep dive into Phillip Rivers and how he fits with the Indianapolis Colts. When we return, we'll talk about NCAA sports in general. Will they still be around if we don't have football? And that'll be right next.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So, college. We've talked about it before. There is a lot of rumblings. Some of the biggest things to talk about recently has been college football and whether it will be affected by this whole COVID-19, which I have not talked about it at all through this whole podcast until right now. But so college football is being affected by it, whether it be them playing with no fans or whether it be postponed or played in the spring or something like that. But the main consensus is we have to play football at some point. And the main reason for that is the other sports kind of rely on football revenue. So, and this can all be backed up by Iowa State Athletic Director Jamie Pollard, who uses analogies to shape situations, whether they are related to rivalries or financial matters. So in a teleconference Thursday, Pollard borrowed one from ISU faculty representative Tim Day to compare weather predictions to his department situation. The longtime Cyclones athletics director described his range of concern from rough to catastrophic, depending on the ability to play one sport and one sport only, and that's football. He says, what we're facing right now is one of three things. It's either a winter blizzard that we hunker down for the weekend, it's the Farmer's Almanac predicting that we're going to have a really hard winter, or we're facing the Ice Age. I think we've all figured out that this is bigger than a blizzard, that we're shut down for the weekend. We're probably in a phase right now that we're in a long, hard winter. But if we can't play football this fall, that means it's Ice Age time, because there is nobody in our industry right now that could reasonably forecast a contingency plan for how they would get through not playing any football games. So, just to give you a little bit of perspective here, Iowa State Athletics, $87.55 million 2020 fiscal year budget, 14% of that was projected football ticket sales, which is $12.5 million. Another $40 million comes from the Big 12 and NCAA, and about 85% of that number is football related. Total revenues, so basically 85% of that $87 million are all football related. I remember I saw a stat the other day that said LSU, it broke down LSU's athletics income, revenue, and expenses, and LSU's football team had like $600 million or something like that, and every other sport had an expense of $200 million or $20 million. One of the two. It's probably $20 million, but so $60 million and $20 million. But anyways, so football is a huge part of these colleges. It really is. I mean, especially some of these athletic programs. Most of the athletics that get played, the non-revenue sports, as they seem to be called, which is mostly the Olympic sports, which is track and field, cross country, stuff like that. They're really in trouble right now. And I mean, even softball, baseball, and baseball are in trouble. Basketball might not be in as much trouble as all the other ones, but some of these sports are really in deep trouble if football is not played. So total revenues vary at different campuses, but the percentages are similar. So there are prospects that a year without football would ruin athletic departments. So the thought that there's no football and losing an entire season, that's a complete game changer, Pollard said. College athletics wouldn't. I'm not going to answer to say go away. I'm not going to say go away as we know it, but it's probably closer to that answer. I think there will be a lot of people that will do everything in their human power to stop short of letting it get to that. That's where you hear issues like, well, we could maybe play next spring. I think that's where that kind of is coming from, because of the desperation of how damning that would be. So Pollard said he applauds the discussions that include different ways schools could play football. He specifically mentioned starting in October with only conference games, or shifting the entire season to next spring as possibilities. There are vast modeling ways, and there will be smarter people than me that will be trying to figure that out, Pollard said. I'm just glad we're finally focused on that. So, losing projected to Big 12 and NCAA tournament revenues cost Iowa State Athletic Department about $5 million. While the Cyclones' reserves could cover that much of a shortfall, it would also leave the department cash poor and exposed. Pollard continues saying, we're not getting that money back. That's money that's gone. You can talk about ways you can mitigate that. You can try to tap into reserves. You can do other things, but you're masking the problem if you don't address the problem that was in the room. So, to try to keep his department as financially healthy as possible, Pollard announced several unusual steps Wednesday night in a letter to Iowa State fans. Pollard wrote that nearly everyone in the athletic department will take a 1-year, 10% pay reduction. Additionally, ISU coaches will suspend all bonuses and incentives for 1 year. Those measures will save the department about $4 million, which is not a lot. Additionally, a few maintenance projects such as resodding Jack Trice Stadium will be deferred to another year. So, traditional cost-saving measures like not filling open positions barely would help the department's bottom line. Of the athletic department's 200 staffers, about 50 employees make up about 75% of the $27 million payroll. Other considerations, such as dropping multiple sports or inducing layoffs, can damage morale and the department culture Pollard has relentlessly improved over his past 15 years at the school. There's also an institutional memory of divisiveness following the department's decision to drop baseball and men's swimming 19 years ago Thursday. So Pollard continues, we wouldn't be ready to be successful when we can re-engage as a society, not to mention just the pain of that would cause a heartache for so many people to add to the state's problems. Because anybody you lay off is going to go on unemployment, and our state is picking up that unemployment. All I'd be doing is passing the burden on to taxpayers, so it just felt like we needed a different solution. So as a member of the NCAA Men's Basketball Tournament Selection Committee, Pollard was at the forefront of the decision to cancel the tournament. What seemed a shocking move 3 weeks ago is now considered the correct decision, he said. At Iowa State, Pollard has more freedom to maneuver in coaching searches and to make major moves than ADs at many other institutions. Still, the reductions were difficult both personally and professionally, and Pollard admitted he barely has slept in recent weeks. ISU's most visible coaches supported the pay cuts, Pollard said, including football coach Matt Campbell, men's basketball coach Steve Prohm, women's basketball coach Bill Finley, and wrestling coach Kevin Dresser. So Pollard says he's proud to be an Iowa Stater who became emotional as he was saying that. He said, I'm proud to work with people that came together in a short period of time to say, let's do this because it's the right thing to do, and we'll focus on the long-term approach. He continues saying, I'm a CPA by trade. You don't mask your problems. There are some people that will say, well, I'm going to spend the entire reserve so that we don't have this, so I can make up this $5 million shortfall. Well, that's one way to do it, but as we talked about in our department, is if we do that, then every decision from that point forward is probably going to be like, no, and we're going to die of 1,000 cuts because we can't operate very long without having some kind of safety net. So basically, cutting coaches' salaries for the time being, pay cuts, stuff like that, is going to help a lot with the bottom line for Iowa State. And this is something that's going on around the country. And this is a Power 5 school in a Power 5 conference in the Big 12, which is one of the most profitable conferences. The teams in the SEC are probably going to be fine because they always have the most revenue, stuff like that. I mentioned LSU. They had like $80 million just from football, and then $20 million from every other sport was an expense. Football is a huge part of most of these colleges, especially in the South. I'm not sure about out in California and stuff like that, but football is easily the biggest revenue sport, and you kind of need it. Some athletic departments kind of rely on it to have, other sports. So here's the issue, though, with the smaller sports. Are the smaller sports still going to survive when it comes to this? Will smaller sports survive? Will smaller schools be able to survive? For instance, if you are a Wofford or Furman, and I'm using those just because they're in my backyard, if you are a FCS school, how would this happen? How would your sports be affected by all this? It's really a struggling issue because football is the main revenue maker for most of these schools. Most of these Power 5 schools, at least. I don't know about the FCS, but I'm assuming football is also the big money maker there. So there's going to be cuts. So we're going to have to play football at some point, and people aren't going to like it. I know some people aren't going to like it, but whether it be in the spring, push it back to start in October and play with a short schedule, because that TV revenue, ticket sales, merchandise, all of that is super important for college athletic programs to, survive. So it's going to be crazy if we don't play football. Like I said, I'm not making any declaration. I hope nobody makes a declaration until at least June, or at least when summer workouts are supposed to start for these football teams. At least have like a plan in place in case we don't have a season. I think it's a little too early once again to kind of just announce that football's canceled. But there you have it. I mean, every college is dealing with this right now. I know a lot of colleges are also dealing with refunding students because their semesters are wiped out. So there's a lot going on in universities these days. So when we return, we'll talk about the NBA and ESPN working together to televise a horse competition when we return.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
So it is very evident that the NBA is kind of starving for content. The NBA is one of those leagues where it's kind of always in the public consciousness, mostly because of free agency or the playoffs, especially this time of year, because we should be gearing up to be going to the playoffs right now and talking about the NBA playoffs for the next 3 months. But instead, we are now sitting here talking about potential horse competitions. But this past weekend, they did a 2K tournament between players, which was okay, I suppose. I didn't watch it, to be honest, but what I've seen on Twitter and stuff like that, it seems like it was underwhelming, mostly because a lot of people who watch ESPN do not want to watch video games, and a lot of people, you know, some of the players didn't have good enough personalities to really work on NBA to make that completely interesting. So, but we do have a quick announcement from ESPN. The NBA and ESPN are working on televising a horse competition involving several high-profile players, sources told ESPN. The discussions have been ongoing among the NBA, NBPA, and ESPN about a competition among several players in isolation, presumably using home gyms, and that would include them competing shot for shot in a traditional playground game, which is horse, which if you don't know what horse is, you do like one shot and the other person has to do the exact same shot, and if they miss it, they get an H, and then you play until you spell out the word horse. There are different variations of that, of course, depending on how long you actually want to be playing, and so it could be an interesting concept, but who knows? Details, including a schedule and specific player involvement, are still being finalized. So the NBA, of course, has been shut down since March 12th because of the coronavirus pandemic, and there's no expectation that the league can resume play anytime soon. So during NBA isolation protocols governing players make it impossible for players to compete in the same location. So either they're gonna make it so these players can just visit each other, I guess, and compete against each other, or they're going to do it completely online where they just kind of have similar spots on the court that they can do at their home courts, because I'm assuming most of the big NBA players probably have a home basketball court. It could be interesting. This could be interesting because, I mean, imagine Steph Curry. Steph versus Seth. Why not? Steph Curry versus Seth Curry. That could be a fun one with their dad just like chilling in the background or something. That could be a fun one to watch. Steph doing trick shots just in general would be fun to watch. Just some of these, I mean, we are definitely in a shooter league. Damian Lillard could potentially bring some greatness into this competition, but the real question is, would you actually watch this? Because I mean, I talked about last week how esports are kind of taking over, or this is their opportunity to take over, and they kind of gaffed there because the NBA 2K tournament it didn't really work out as much as people wanted it to work out. But could this horse competition be worked out? I think it's interesting enough where if you get the right players into it, people could be interested in it. But if you don't get the right players, then it's gonna be going to be iffy there. So here's a report from Bleacher Report that according to New York Post, Andrew Marchand, Oklahoma City guard Chris Paul, Houston Rockets guard Russell Westbrook, Utah Jazz guard Donovan Mitchell, and New Orleans Pelicans guard forward Zion Williamson might be included. Those are some names that are being thrown out there. And, of course, those are some of the bigger names out there. I think Chris Paul could be interesting. Russell Westbrook could be interesting, although they are not really known for making these crazy shots. Zion, I don't know. I feel like he's just going to dunk it the whole time. I don't know if that's just ESPN trying to get Zion involved, but I don't know if Zion would be great for this matchup. So Horst was part of the NBA All-Star Weekend activities in 2009 and 2010. In brief run, spoke to how poorly it landed with fans. However, the idea could enjoy more success this time. Of course, assuming each game was taped in advance, the players could have more time to get creative. Using props or environmental features for shots could be tricky, though, with two independent setups. In general, fans will be happy with whatever they can get, which I don't know about that. I mean, I've seen plenty of things. Like, I mean, I know ESPN and CBS and stuff like that have been playing older games, classic games and stuff like that. And I've seen people watch them on Twitter, but I haven't. A lot of my friends haven't, because people like live sports. They don't like sports where they already know the outcome and stuff like that. So it's going to be very difficult to kind of remake that magic. I mean, Horst could be a decent idea, I guess, but I'm not sure if it could work out in the long term here. But we do have some breaking news. I'm going to kind of pivot this segment here. We do have some breaking news. So the Masters, as I'm recording this, the Masters have came out and said that the Masters tournament will get moved. It has been postponed until the Masters, the Augusta National PGA Tour announced new Masters, U.S. Open, and PGA Championship dates here. So the PGA announced a reconfigured 2020 schedule Monday, featuring the cancellation of the Open Championship and new dates for the three remaining major championships. So the PGA Championship will be this year's first major, August 6th through 9th. The U.S. Open will take place September 17th through 20th, and the Masters has been moved to November 12th through the 15th. The Ryder Cup will remain at September 25th to 27th, while the FedEx Cup playoffs have been pushed back 1 week to begin August 10th. So the PGA has been on hiatus since last month amidst the coronavirus pandemic, of course. No other major sports leagues that postponed their seasons have announced formal return dates. But the PGA Tour, I mean, golf is one of those sports where it's kind of easy to do it, especially if everything dies down. I mean, everything can still die down by August and September and then November, and they could still have just no crowds, because it could die down enough where the players can still interact with each other and still be fine, still be healthy, but they can have no crowds. Football, basketball, these sports with huge arenas that kind of need fans. Fans are probably not going to be a thing at all this year. I'm just saying, because even if they're comfortable with putting their players out and they think it's safe enough for the players to be around each other and playing, highly competitive contact sports, are they comfortable enough to have tens of thousands of fans also in there as well? So I'm not sure about that. But golf, I'm actually interested in why golf, I guess it's the traveling aspect of it, but I've been very interested in why golf actually stopped, because golf, they can easily stay away from each other and stuff like that and not touch each other's clubs and stuff like that. So, but the Masters getting moved to November 12th, I saw that this would put it up against NFL that Sunday. CBS will have to make a decision whether it wants to do the final round of the Masters or NFL, which I'm sure they'll figure something out there, especially with streaming being a thing. They can have it so you can choose which one you want. But then, of course, you have college football, if we have college football, that Saturday. Sorry about that. That Saturday. So, and this is all due... so President Donald Trump met with commissioners of major sports leagues on Saturday, including the PGA and LPGA. Trump would not publicly commit to a date for sports returning, but he said he thinks it will be sooner rather than later. He said, the president said, I want fans back in the arenas whenever we're ready and as soon as we can. The fans want to be back. They want to see basketball, baseball, football, and hockey. They want to see their sports. They want to go out on the golf courses and breathe nice, clean, and beautiful fresh air. I can't tell you a date, but I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. So the PGA announcing set dates could put the tour in a position to having to announce more postponements, though it's possible it would outright cancel events if pandemic stretches into the summer. So this is something that I've seen a couple times. I've seen people kind of excited on Twitter that sports are coming back because these leagues are pushing or postponing their stuff back to November or June or July. The thing they don't realize is that it can easily get canceled again. Yeah, they moved it back, but that doesn't guarantee that it's gonna happen on that date. Anyway, so that's some breaking news there. So it happened while I was recording. So there we go. Some breaking news. It's not breaking news for you, but it was breaking news for me. But the Augusta National could be a thing. When we come back, we'll continue with our top 100 movies, or the Athletics top 100 movies. We'll go from movies 69 to 60. It's kind of a boxing heavy top 10 from what I'm seeing. So we'll discuss that when we return.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we are once again. I have not watched any of the movies that I said I was going to watch. Because I don't know, I'm too lazy to watch movies. Apparently, I don't know. I'm not lazy enough to make a podcast 3 days a week, but I am lazy enough to watch movies, and I don't know why that is. Mostly because Animal Crossing has been consuming my entire life recently. If you don't know what Animal Crossing is, I can't really describe it to you. It's just kind of you live on an island and you do chores. It doesn't sound appealing, but it sinks you in, and I've been playing that nonstop for 2 weeks now. I've put in well over 60 hours into it, I'm pretty sure. So, anyways, we are in the 60s now. We're going 69 to 60. This is definitely a boxing heavy top 10. I've seen at least 2 of the movies, and I haven't completely looked through it. But I mean, this is kind of a boxing heavy one. You can probably imagine which ones I'm talking about. But let's go ahead. Let's start 69. We're starting with the boxing movie. Creed 2 recently came out in 2018. Average rating of 77.38. Sports movies are all about the goosebumps moments. The pimples on the back of my neck have never been raised higher than when Rocky walks into his restaurant and sees Drago sitting at a table near the wall. For a kid raised on Rocky movies, the nostalgia packed more punch than the Balboa at left cross. Michael B. Jordan and Tessa Thompson shine, but seeing Rocky and Drago exchange icy glares for the first time since Balboa single-handedly ended the Cold War in Rocky IV was even more than I could have hoped for going in. So I have not seen this movie. I need to see Creed. I haven't seen Creed 1 yet. I've heard a lot of great things about these movies, and I really do need to watch them. I heard Michael B. Jordan's great in them, and I heard that they're just really good movies to watch. So Creed 2 at number 69, I wish that actually might be one I will watch because I've been meaning to watch those for the longest time. 68, one I've never heard of. Dogtown and the Z-Boys, 2001, average rating of 77.62. Dogtown and the Z-Boys lives in a magical moment when talented troubled kids from a down-and-out neighborhood, in this case the Dogtown area of Venice, California, discover and embrace reasons to be passionate about something. This Stacey Peralta-directed documentary is more than the story about skateboarding's emergence in America. So skateboarding was huge in the early 2000s, of course, with Tony Hawk and Bam Margera and stuff like that. skateboarding was huge. Tony Hawk Pro Skater games. I played them. You had you pretty much just that actually, but Tony Hawk was huge in the early 2000s, late 90s and early 2000s. Skateboarding had is perfect perfect click there going on, and I guess this is a documentary about kids that are skateboarding and about skateboarding's emergence in America. It's interesting. I might watch it if I'm incredibly bored one day. I'm not that interested in skateboarding, to be honest, besides the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games that I played when I was younger. But it sounds interesting at least. So, 67, big fan, 2009, average rating is 77.67. Patton Oswalt is brilliant in this dark comedy about an obsessive New York Giants fan. The parking attendant and frequent sports radio caller doesn't care that the rest of the world probably views him as a loser. He sees his fanaticism and devotion as a source of purpose and dignity in an oddly engrossing little tale. So, never heard of that. Never heard of it. But Patton Oswalt, I like Patton Oswalt, and the premise is intriguing enough for me. So I need to kind of write this down because that actually sounds very interesting. I don't know where it is on streaming services. I wish they included streaming services if it was on a streaming service or not. The picture of it is just Patton Oswalt with a blue and red face paint on because, the Giants. That's interesting to say the least. It's got a 6.7 on IMDb and an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. So there you go. There you have that. Next up, we have 66 Chariots of Fire, 1981. Average rating 77.81. Two sprinters, each running for a cause greater than their own. The 1981 Oscar winner for Best Picture is a brilliant examination of the journeys of Harold Abrahams and Eric Liddell, both of whom won gold and glory for the British Olympic team. Liddell was a Scot at the 1924 Olympics in Paris. So, it won Best Picture. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. Class-obsessed and religiously divided United Kingdom of the early 1920s, two determined runners trained for the 1924 Paris Olympics. So, I'm sure it's a great movie. I'm interested in it, I guess. Man, this is a quality part of this list. Just saying, because I'm interested in most of these. But we have the big one. I don't know why this is so low. This is a big one. At number 65, the 1985 classic Rocky IV with an average rating of 78.01. So the writer of the excerpt said, November 27th, 1985, 5 days after my 10th birthday, my dad and I went to Tower Mall, Portsmouth, Virginia, and saw Rocky IV on opening night. The place was packed because it was all good Americans in 1985. We were rooting for Rocky to beat the crap out of the Russian. If you haven't seen this movie, first of all, you're a communist sympathizer. Then consider this a spoiler word. Early in the movie, Ivan Drago is beating up Apollo Creed, and there's a flash to Rocky, who's holding in the towel in between rounds. Apollo tells him not to stop the fight, but still Rocky can see where this is going. Drago throws a vicious punch and connects. You see it connect. You see the towel drop. Black. I'm 10. I know what happened. A hush in the theater. Everyone knows exactly what happened, except one woman. Next thing you see is... I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it. It's a great movie. But he does tell his anecdote about a woman yelling during the theater and everybody laughed about it. But the rest of the movie is a Cold War cliche, complete with James Brown singing, Rocky losing, and then winning and delivering the cornball speech at the end. If I could change, you can change, everybody can change. It's so corny, but such a highlight of the mid-'80s Cold War culture, and it's also why we won, USA. One of my friends actually used Rocky IV in a school project about the Cold War, and he said we won the Cold War because of Rocky IV. So there you have that. The great movie, fantastic. It's my favorite Rocky movie. It's just everything about it is just so bigger. It's just bigger, and it's not necessarily the best movie, but it's the most entertaining in my opinion. Just the montage, everything about it is just so well made. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen Rocky IV, if you haven't seen any of the Rocky movies, you should watch the Rocky movies. I'm sure the rest of the Rocky movie, or Rocky 1 through 3, will be further down in this list. So we'll talk about them when we get to it. But yeah, I mean, Rocky IV is my favorite. I remember watching it as a kid, and it was the only Rocky movie I could actually finish from start to finish, and then I watched the rest of them. The rest of them are very well made, but Rocky IV was the one that kept my attention the longest. And I'm not sure it was because of communism and Russians. I'm not sure if it was just beating up communism or something. I don't know. But 64, Vision Quest, 1985, average rating of 78.13. Officially learned I was a sports writer in the 9th grade in my 1 year as a high school wrestler. Vision Quest, as you would imagine, was required viewing for all high school wrestlers. And while you don't have to watch it 50 times like I did, you ought to watch it once. It's still a little bit of everything, and it's got all the shoot in our lives somewhere. I don't know what Vision Quest is. Don't know what that is. But Josh Kendall, South Carolina beat writer, said he likes it, so I guess I don't like it. I don't know, because I have to like everything the opposite of him. Looking at the poster, it looked weird. But it's a wrestling movie, I guess. So there you have that. Number 63, Prefontaine, 1997, average rating of 78.32. Movie itself is okay, but what makes it work is the lore of the character like Steve Prefontaine. As the years go by, he turns more and more into a fable. Paul Bunyan running the 5,000. The film is bolstered by nimbly weaving in archive footage, but is anchored by R. Lee Ermey's portrayal of legendary Oregon coach Bill Bowerman. So, Steve Prefontaine is an American long-distance runner who completed the 1972 Olympics while running for the Oregon Track Club. He set American records at every distance from 2,000 to 10,000 meters as he prepared for the 1976 Olympics. So that is insane to think about. But anyways, 62... Look at that, Rocky III from 1982, average rating 78.36. I have no quarrel with this. Those who prefer the superior film craft of earlier Rocky films, but for me, the franchise isn't about quality, it's about indulgence. And Rocky III is where the series finds its voice, juice to the gills and cheesier than Kraft singles. It's not the acting or the mise-en-scene that endures, but the Hulk Hogan and Mr. T cameos and Rocky and Apollo bro-hugging on the beach. Rocky III is a fantastic movie as well, with Hulk Hogan at the beginning and Rocky fighting Hulk Hogan for some reason. But Rocky 3 is also a good one if you haven't seen Rocky 3. 61, Rush, 2013, average rating 78.46. This movie was an entry point for my journey as a Formula One fan, and it chronicles the rivalry between Niki Lauda and James Hunt, the early mid-70s. Daniel Bruce's portrayal of Lauda is incredible. Chris Hemsworth Hunt is the best performance of his career, and Hans Zimmer's score is epic, because Hans Zimmer's score is always epic. But watch this. It'll follow it up with a Netflix Formula One Drive to Survive documentary series. You'll be waking up early on Sunday mornings to see if Young Guns Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc can dethrone Lewis Hamilton as world champion to win the 2020 season starts. So, Formula One, I actually got a Formula One racing game, and I tried it out, and I suck at it. So there you have it. Number 60, The Mighty Ducks, 1992. Not the best movie in the series, but I love an origin story. These Ducks are the only true underdogs of the series, and these young Ducks are probably the funniest team of the series. Also, the Ducks uniforms here are possibly my favorite hockey uniform, period. Mighty Ducks is a fantastic movie. It's a little bit more on the kids' side, but it's a fantastic movie, a fantastic hockey movie. But there you have it. That's 69 through 60. Thursday we'll do 59 through 50. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at @Strickland_Josh, and I hope you really enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you have a great week, I guess. I'll see you on Thursday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.